Hello everybody, today we're going to be talking about Napoleon Dynamite, one of the best movies I think came out in the 2000s, a small little movie made possible by the sincerest of intentions of its creators and the collective effort of its talented cast and crew, and something of a bit of a signpost of things to come. A small movie made on a shoestring budget blows up and becomes instantly a cultural staple, a merchandising opportunity, a financial juggernaut, and all the things that were just kind of expected to see come along with any piece of contemporary media. I'd like to briefly state why, on sort of a higher level, I like this movie so much, and it's that the movie punches upward at people in power, at oppressive systems, outdated ways of thinking. These are more often than not the targets of its humor, and it allows its funny and awkward protagonists to be just that. Funny and awkward without us necessarily gawking and laughing at them. Napoleon Dynamite isn't a zoo that encourages audiences to come and gawk at a bunch of awkward rubes. These characters are treated with love and respect, even if they're silly, and they come away feeling like actual characters instead of caricatures.
It's just that simple.
Their struggles feel real and their triumphs are earned due to pretty careful storytelling and a lot of craftsmanship that's visible right from the get-go. And also, I think, a collaborative, positive work environment, from what I can tell, took place while they were making it. If you would like to learn more about fun and interesting facts about how the movie was made, a lot of the information that I got was taken from a Rolling Stone article titled An Oral History of Napoleon Dynamite by Jennifer Wood. It's pretty good, so I'm going to leave a link in the description. Go check it out if you want. Part 1. Craftsmanship and Collaboration. Deb, Napoleon, Uncle Rico, Kip, all of these characters feel real from the moment they appear on screen, and I think that's due to the quite obvious craftsmanship that is on display from the opening credits, which are really simplistic and yet really genius, and they were actually the idea of Aaron Ruhl, who plays Kip. Everything from the cinematography to the music to the costuming, everybody brought their A game to this movie, and keep in mind that Napoleon Dynamite cost under $400,000 to make total. As a result of their work, these characters feel like a real slice of Idaho where the film takes place, in a way that a lot of contemporary writers still struggle at producing. A lot of this is due to the fact that director-co-writer Jared Hess and co-writer Jerusha Hess based a lot of the experiences and scenes in the film off of their own life. Jerusha Hess talks a lot about how the character Deb is based off of her experience growing up, and that famous scene, "I like your sleeves, they're real big," actually happened to her when she went to her high school prom. So it's these little details that are funny and out of the blue and yet feel extremely real because a lot of it was. The music by John Sweetheart is perfect. It is really simple, and yet it's very effective in delivering both the tone of the scene and also adding an extra layer of character to the movie, because it's this one keyboard kind of soundtrack. It reminds me so much of a John Carpenter film, because John Carpenter famously would score his own movies as well. And the composer used this film as somewhat of a launchpad for his own career. He later went on to compose the opening music for How I Met Your Mother. I'm gonna give the writing for Napoleon Dynamite an A minus A. It's almost perfect. And I want to stress that this movie wasn't improvised. A lot of modern comedies rely way too heavily on their actors improvising and going on for takes that just feel like they go on forever and ever and ever, and it's because they're not actually sticking to the point of the scene. Everything was on the page, as actress Haley Duff, who plays Summer Wheatley, said. The creators set out with a very specific vision in mind, and in that regard, they accomplished it. And when I said that they set out with a singular vision, I don't mean that in a dictatorial, auteur, kind of self-blowing kind of a way. The working environment, from what I can tell, was actually extremely positive and collaborative. So many great ideas in Napoleon Dynamite came about as the result of a group effort, starting with Napoleon's look. That was the result of the combined ideas of co-writers Jared and Jerusha Hess, along with star John Heder. John came up with the idea of going to the thrift store, if I remember correctly. It was Jared who wanted the moon boots specifically, and it was Jerusha who said, we need to give Napoleon curly hair, and so they permed John's hair, and when you put it all together, bing bang boom, there's Napoleon Dynamite. The different hands that you see presenting the different credits at the beginning of the film are sort of a great metaphor for how this movie came to be. The ending of the movie, that famous dance sequence, was also another product of collaboration. So Jared and Jerusha found out that John Heder, the star, was a bit of a dancer. He would go out to nightclubs and do these choreographed dances with, I think, his siblings. And so they thought, as they were running out of footage or film stock for their, student budget short film they were making, they thought, we need to shoot something really worth putting on this film stock. And I thought, well, our star is really good at dancing. Let's dress him up in the Napoleon Dynamite costume and let's have him dance. And seeing the result, seeing how funny that looked, something you wouldn't expect out of this character, they were like, this is how it's gotta end. Like, this is how our story ends. Napoleon Dynamite was made with student discounts on film stock, actors reportedly crashing on each other's couches, and while they weren't filming, they were on set hanging out making boondoggle keychains and other things that you wouldn't see on another studio pretty much ever. However, I want to stress that this doesn't mean that the film was made in a sloppy and unorganized fashion. Star Tina Margarino, who plays Deb, said, quote, "I don't think I've ever been on a set with such organization. We were busting out probably 8 to 10 pages a day, and we would wrap every day at 6:30 p.m. It just goes to show you that you can have a really positive and collaborative work environment, even on a film, without having to sacrifice that efficiency and professionality.
It's just that simple.
Part 2, Punching Up, Pedro versus the School. As I stated earlier, a lot of the film's humor derives from characters punching up. Is there anything more metal than sneaking tater tots in your pockets? In class?
Napoleon, give me some of your tots.
And I'll go find your own.
All of the characters are from what you would kind of describe the fringes of their community. Whether you have Napoleon himself, which I didn't even necessarily put this together, but as I was doing my research, a lot of people online sort of identified or described relating to Napoleon as neuroatypical. Or you also have Kip, who is very effeminate and affectionate and romantic and sweet.
It's like a lullaby. I'm just flying by, oh so high, like a kite.
And you have Don, played by Trevor Snar, who is the chattiest Chad who ever chatted, who's there to sneer at them this whole time. But in my mind, the best subplot that encapsulates this idea of punching upwards is Pedro's presidential campaign. Pedro, played by Efren Ramirez, is the new kid who is also unashamedly Mexican. And halfway through the movie, he sees a poster on the wall and decides that he wants to run for student government as the president, and immediately faces backlash from the establishment, which here means, the popular kids, but also the principal.
Look, Pedro, I don't know how they do things down in Juarez, but here in Idaho we have a little something called
Pride.
The opposition, the Summer Wheatley campaign, clearly has way more resources in the way of the posters. They have the law on their side, and so by all means they're the ones who are poised to strike victory yet again. You get the idea that Summer is always the class president. And the way that our heroes defeat this tyranny is through mutual aid. They donate and pool their talents. You have Napoleon using his sweet skills with the pen. You have Deb lending the wig and her style advice, and you have even, yes, Pedro's cousins who protect the innocent from some of the school's not so kind children. And I would like to point out that Pedro's Mexicanness isn't the butt of the joke. He is Mexican, but he's also just as weird and awkward and funny as Napoleon or Deb. He just so happens to be Mexican, and you have that added dimension of how these other characters in the school react to him. But you're never laughing at him like, ha ha ha, this funny Mexican kid. Part 3. Uncle Rico and Toxic Masculinity. Uncle Rico is a great character. He is undeniably a huge douche, but not in a way that makes him irredeemable by the end of the movie. When he comes onto the scene, Uncle Rico, played by John Grease, you immediately get the sense that this guy is a bit of a reactionary loser, a sexist guy who is obsessed with going back in time to his glory days to relive the fantasy of being the all-powerful alpha male.
Well, she's jealous. Says I'm living too much in '82. Yeah, I dumped her.
But you also get a sense that this character is emerging onto our stage at probably the lowest point in his life. You never are laughing at him because he is actually this awesome alpha guy. The humor is coming from the fact that this is a guy who is suffering from a pretty severe and obvious midlife crisis.
You ever come across anything like time travel?
You can tell that he hasn't split up with his partner due to some type of irreconcilable difference, but rather that he has problems with how he views himself, and he's projecting that on to his partner, and of course when he comes into the house, immediately starts projecting that onto the kids.
Oh, and you know we can't afford the fun pack. What do you think, money grows on trees in this family? Take it back.
Get some Pampers for you and your brother while you're at it.
And the way he immediately tries to assert himself as patriarch of the family, as this world-class business tycoon.
I mean, we gotta look legit, man.
None of these avenues lead to Uncle Rico's resolution, but rather it is after suffering a true dark night of the soul, aka getting his ass handed to him by Rex from Rex Kwon Do, that he leaves the Napoleon Dynamite household. You can see that he's parked his RV off, on the side of the road somewhere. He's not filming himself on his football camera anymore, but rather reflecting on maybe the fact that he pushed his family away. And in this moment, his partner comes riding in on a bike. And you get these bits of humanity with Uncle Rico throughout the film to show you that what he actually wants is human connection.
Well, I felt really relaxed. Thanks, Deb.
Napoleon, too, goes through a bit of a transformation himself in regards to his own perceived masculinity. Yes, he and Kip are good boys at heart, but Napoleon very clearly suffers from confidence issues, very much exacerbated by, well... And there was a great YouTube comment that I found that helped actually put something together for me in my mind, which is that famous line from Napoleon, "Girls only want guys who have great skills." And that's true in this sense that he thinks at the beginning of the movie that girls are going to be attracted to him if he's got skills with the bow staff and with nunchucks, but after Deb sort of pseudo breaks up with him, what ends up leading to the reconciliation is that he lends his sick dance moves to Pedro. And so he did have great skills. He had awesome skills. But it was the using of the awesome skills in support of his friend. That is what was attractive to Deb. Part 4. La Fonda. What's going on there? For the most part, I think Napoleon Dynamite handles race in a mostly positive way. But if there were any places where you would kind of get hung up or raise an eyebrow at, it would be with the character of LaFonda, both in the way her name is spelled on screen and the fact that I don't think that's a real name. And there are even one or two lines that I think have aged themselves out of the film.
You guys are retarded!
You know, it was 2004. And I'm not gonna lie, I have mixed feelings on this element. LaFonda, played by Chandrella Avery, is both the butt of that joke in that sense. You expect Kip's girlfriend to be this skinny white girl, and here she is as this beautiful black lady. But immediately that kind of stops being the joke, at least as far as I can tell, and you have LaFonda reacting to Napoleon as other people do, which is like, this guy's, you know, kind of strange. But she also is warm and friendly to him. She offers him her cousin's mixtape when she sees that Napoleon is all sweaty from dancing.
You like dancing?
And even at the end of the movie, if you skip past the end credits, you have Kip and LaFonda getting married, and his sort of do-rag necklace thing, that kind of gets dropped. I guess I'll say is that your mileage may vary when it comes to this subplot. Part 5. The Napoleon Legacy. Napoleon Dynamite was a huge success, and I think it's notable if you were born sort of in the 90s, if you're a millennial or a Gen Z, that media properties coming out, even small ones, being huge successes with merchandising opportunities and tie-ins and all kinds of stuff, that's something that we sort of like take for granted as coming with any of these media properties. But at the time, nobody knew that this movie was going to be a hit. When they premiered it at Sundance, which was, you know, the famous place where it blew up, that was the first time they screened it for anyone. It didn't even have that title sequence at the beginning. It just immediately started in with Napoleon. So they didn't know what they had on their hands. They thought it was good and they hoped it was good, but they didn't know it was going to be, you know, as big as it was. And I guess why this is so notable is because it blew up precisely because people responded to it so organically and so strongly. I mean, people really, really gravitated to this movie. There's this great anecdote in the Rolling Stone article where they're talking about filming and using these high school kids as extras for the high school scenes, and as they're in between takes, you're hearing them literally quote the script as, you know, idiot, freaking idiot, or, you know, all kinds of stuff like that. And they took that as a positive sign that they had something good on their hands. But even still, they didn't know how much people were going to instantly fall in love with these characters. There's a quote by Trevor Groth, the director of programming for Sundance at the time, who said that, "In my 20 years on the programming staff for Sundance, Napoleon Dynamite is the only feature film submission I immediately rewatched." And I think that alone kind of captures it all. So the legacy of Napoleon Dynamite lives on in our hearts, in our minds, and in our memes. Here's to this quirky, wonderful little story about a group of friends who dared to be themselves, and gosh darn it, they succeeded. Thanks everybody for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
Last week, Japanese scientists placed explosive detonators at the bottom of Lake Loch Ness to blow Nessie out of the water. Sir Court Godfrey of the Nessie Alliance summoned the help of